secrets, betrayal, and a desperate fight for survival. Today, we dive deep into a heart-stopping moment from the latest episode of Beyond the Gates. Doug, cornered in a cold, dark warehouse, faces the ruthless Marcel, his fate hanging by a thread. With his empire crumbling and his past sins catching up, Doug is forced to make an impossible choice. But just as he tries to bargain for his life, a phone call from Haley sets off a chain reaction that could change everything. Who's pulling the strings? And can Doug escape the nightmare he's trapped in, or will the truth destroy him first? Doug's breathing was ragged as his knees hit the cold concrete floor. The dim, flickering light above him did little to mask the harsh shadows that stretched across the walls of the isolated warehouse. The bitter scent of metal and old wood hung heavy in the air. He could feel the walls closing in, the concrete pressing down on him, but none of it compared to the suffocating weight of the man standing before him. Marcel's eyes were cold, empty, like black holes that sucked in any shred of hope. The past months, the betrayal, the lies, all led to this moment. Doug had been too reckless, too confident that his secrets were safe. But Marcel had always been one step ahead, always watching, always waiting. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Doug had been on top, a key player in a game he had mastered for years. He had the power, the influence, he thought he could control everything, everyone. He had made enemies, but he had made even more allies. His empire was growing. But now, in this freezing, concrete hellhole, Doug was reminded that nothing was permanent, not even power. "Please," Doug gasped, his voice hoarse, barely more than a whisper. His eyes were wide with desperation as he looked up at Marcel, who stood with an aura of certainty, a calmness that felt like a storm brewing. He had been preparing for this moment, but nothing had prepared Doug for how this felt. Marcel didn't even flinch at Doug's plea. The silence between them was deafening, the kind of silence that only happens before the storm hits. Doug was trying to buy time. He had nothing left to offer, but he would beg. He would beg for his life. Doug's mind raced, images flashing through his thoughts, the rise to power, the deals made in shadows, the faces of the people who trusted him and the ones who betrayed him. He had been ruthless, had stepped over others to reach his position. But even he had his breaking point. Was this it? Was this how it ended? Marcel stepped forward, his shoes making a soft thud against the floor. Every step Doug heard felt like a drumbeat to his impending doom. When Marcel spoke, his voice was low, almost soothing, as if he were speaking to a child. "You really thought you could escape the truth?" Marcel asked, his words not a question, but a statement, a cruel reminder of the mistake Doug had made. "You've built your empire on lies, Doug. On deceit. And you think you can just walk away from it?" The words cut deep, deeper than Doug could ever have imagined. He had known this day would come. The truth always comes out, doesn't it? But he had hoped, prayed even, that he could outrun it. That he could control it. But here, in this moment, the truth was inescapable. Doug clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white, as the weight of Marcel's words sank in. His empire had been built on secrets, but now those secrets were catching up with him. And in the darkness of this room, those secrets felt like shackles, tightening with every passing second. Doug's voice cracked as he tried again. "You don't understand. I can help you. I know things about your past, your deals. I can make it all go away." But Marcel simply smirked. "You think I care about your pathetic attempts to make deals now? You've lost everything, Doug. All that's left is the truth, and nothing you say will change that." Desperation was building in Doug's chest, choking him, but he couldn't give up. He couldn't let it end like this. Not after everything he had worked for. His hand shot out, grabbing at Marcel's arm, as if touching him might bring some sort of comfort, some kind of salvation. Then, Doug did something he hadn't planned on. He revealed the one thing that could destroy everything Marcel had worked for. It was a gamble, a last-ditch effort to save himself. The words spilled out, as raw as they were damning. But before Doug could finish his confession, his phone buzzed. A strange sensation washed over him, and for the briefest moment, he felt as if the world had tilted. The phone call was from Haley. Doug hesitated, his hands trembling as he pulled his phone from his pocket. The vibration felt like a heartbeat in the silence, a reminder that the world outside this cold warehouse was still turning. But as Doug swiped to answer, he didn't know that this call would be the turning point. He could already hear Haley's frantic voice on the other end of the line, but it wasn't the comforting tone he was used to. This was different. This was urgent. "Doug, you need to listen to me. Something's happening. Something big. I can't explain everything now, but you need to get out. Now." Her voice was strained, filled with fear and emotion Doug had never associated with her. In all their years of working together, Haley had always been the calm one. The strategist. But now, even her voice couldn't mask the panic. Doug's stomach twisted as he looked back at Marcel, who hadn't moved an inch but whose gaze had hardened. For a moment, Doug stood frozen, torn between the looming threat in front of him and the unexpected chaos unfolding elsewhere. It was a dangerous choice, one that could seal his fate either way. And yet, despite everything, despite knowing what was coming next, Doug couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this choice, would haunt him forever. Doug's grip on his phone tightened, his fingers aching, as he listened to Haley's voice crackle over the line. Her words were urgent, charged with an intensity that was rare for her. It wasn't just a warning. It was a plea. Doug's heart raced as the heavy weight of her distress hit him with the force of a freight train. "I don't care what it takes, Doug. You need to get out. The people we're dealing with, they're bigger than you think. They know about everything. Marcel, everything you thought you had under control, it's slipping through our fingers." Her voice trembled, but Doug could hear the sharpness in it, the desperation. Doug wanted to respond, to ask what she meant, but Marcel's cold presence was overwhelming, suffocating him. He couldn't tear his gaze away from the man who held his life in his hands. Marcel was a force of nature, unyielding and powerful. But Doug had been a player in this dangerous game long enough to know that there were always ways to turn the tide. The question was, did he have enough time? Marcel, standing like a shadow in the doorway, watched Doug, eyes flickering with mild interest but no emotion. His posture was relaxed, the kind of calm that hinted at a predator's patience. Doug swallowed hard, trying to steady his breath. His mind raced, shifting between the reality of his imprisonment and the chaos Haley had just revealed to him. His empire, the lies, everything he had built, was it all crumbling around him? And then it hit him. That gut-wrenching feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. There were too many pieces to this puzzle that he hadn't seen. Doug had always been good at staying ahead, but right now, he was playing catch-up. And in this game, catching up meant the difference between life and death. He had to get out. He had to survive. But Marcel was standing in front of him, cutting off every exit, every escape. Doug could feel the weight of his confession, the bombshell secret he had just dropped. He had no idea what effect it would have on Marcel, but he knew one thing: once the truth was out, there would be no going back. That truth wasn't just dangerous for him. It was dangerous for everyone involved. And now, it was out there, no longer under lock and key, no longer a piece of leverage Doug could wield for himself. Doug's eyes flicked back to the phone in his hand, his thumb hesitating on the button. He could tell Haley wanted to say more, but something was stopping her. Or someone. His mind flashed to the other connections, other people involved who had their own agendas, their own motivations. The web of deceit was far larger than he had imagined. Was it too late to pull himself out? A low chuckle from Marcel broke his thoughts. "You think you can save yourself by playing your little game of secrets?" Marcel's voice was soft but mocking, like the calm before a storm. "You've been digging your own grave for a long time, Doug. Now, let's see if you can dig yourself out of it." Doug's heart pounded as the realization settled in. Marcel wasn't just a figure in the shadows. He wasn't just a man pulling strings behind the scenes. No, Marcel was the game. He was the storm. Doug had underestimated him. And now, everything he had worked for, his reputation, his connections, his very life, was hanging by a thread. Just as Doug tried to find the words to make one last attempt, to try to reach Haley, the phone buzzed again. A second call. He didn't have time for this. Every moment wasted could be his last. But when he glanced at the screen, his stomach sank. The number on the caller ID wasn't one he recognized. And yet, something about it felt familiar. Marcel noticed his shift in focus, his cold smile twitching at the corner of his lips. "Who's that, Doug? Another lifeline?" Marcel's voice was laced with amusement, but it only heightened Doug's panic. Without thinking, Doug answered the call, his voice barely a whisper. "Haley? Is everything?" But before he could finish, a voice on the other end cut him off. A voice that wasn't Haley's. It was someone else, a man. A voice Doug had hoped never to hear again. "Doug, it's Jacob. You're in deeper than you think. They know everything. You need to get out now, or it's over for all of us." Doug's mind went blank. Jacob? His former partner, the one he had thought was long gone from the picture. But Jacob's voice was unmistakable, filled with urgency and fear. The last time Doug had seen him, they were allies, working toward the same goals. But somewhere along the way, Jacob had disappeared, slipping into the shadows. And now he was back, with a warning that felt more like a death sentence. Doug's heart raced as the implications of Jacob's words settled in. They know everything. That wasn't just about his past. It was about the present. It was about Haley. It was about the truth that had just been exposed, the truth that threatened not just Doug's life, but the lives of everyone involved. "Jacob, what do you mean? Who are they? What's happening?" But before Jacob could answer, the line went dead. The silence was deafening. Doug's mind reeled. He was running out of time. Every second, every breath, felt like it was leading him to the edge of a cliff. Marcel was still standing there, watching him, as though he could read Doug's every thought. It was impossible to tell what was going on in his head, but Doug knew one thing for sure: Marcel was enjoying this. He was enjoying Doug's fear, enjoying the power he had over him. The game was no longer just about survival. It was about control. And Doug had lost it. And then, just as Doug thought the world might come crashing down around him, Danny's voice echoed through the warehouse. She had arrived. But she wasn't alone. She had brought others with her, people Doug didn't recognize, people whose allegiance wasn't clear. Everything was happening too fast. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place in ways Doug couldn't have predicted. Danny's discovery about Marcel was more than just a loose thread, it was a rope, a lifeline that could either save him or drag him deeper into the abyss. In that moment, Doug realized just how little control he had left. There were too many players in this game, too many hidden truths, too many lies stacked on top of lies. And no matter how hard he fought, no matter what moves he made, there would be no escaping the consequences. The tension was palpable. Doug's fate hung in the balance, but the twist of fate wasn't over yet. As he stood there, his mind racing with thoughts of escape and survival, Danny's footsteps echoed through the warehouse. But it wasn't just Danny who arrived. The air felt thick, charged with the presence of others, figures Doug hadn't anticipated. Figures whose loyalties were shrouded in mystery, their intentions unclear. He looked at Marcel, who stood motionless, his cold eyes narrowing with every new sound that reached him. Doug couldn't help but wonder if this was it. Had the lies and betrayals finally caught up with him? Had his past mistakes set him on this irreversible path? The truth was, Doug had always been in control, or so he thought. But now, it seemed like every decision he had made, every ally he had trusted, had been part of a game he wasn't even aware of until it was too late. And then, Danny, determined, resolute, stepped into the room, her gaze sharp, as if she already knew the weight of the secrets Doug had tried to bury. Her eyes met his for a brief moment, and Doug could see the conflict within her. She wasn't here just to save him, she was here to expose the truth. The truth that would either set them all free or bind them to an inescapable fate. With a quick motion, Danny turned toward Marcel, her words cutting through the thick silence of the room. She had found something, a crucial detail, something Marcel never thought would be discovered. Doug could feel the shift in the room, the air thickening with anticipation. Marcel, for the first time, seemed unsure. The once unshakable foundation of his control over Doug, over everyone, was starting to crumble. But the victory was short-lived. As Marcel stepped back, seemingly weighing his next move, Doug's heart pounded. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours. The tension in the room was unbearable. It was clear now, nothing would be the same. Just as it appeared that the truth about Marcel's darkest secrets would finally be exposed, Haley's voice echoed from the other side of the room, her presence shocking everyone in the room. Her arrival had shifted the dynamics in ways Doug hadn't anticipated. She wasn't just his ally, she was a wildcard, an unpredictable factor in the game he thought he knew. "Don't do it, Doug," Haley's voice rang out, her face a mask of determination. "You think revealing everything will free you? It's not that simple." Doug froze, the truth of her words hitting him hard. He'd been desperate. He'd been looking for any way out, but this wasn't a game he could win. No matter how many cards he played, the consequences of his actions were already in motion. The people he trusted, the ones who had always stood by him, now felt like distant memories. Everything he thought he knew about loyalty and power had been shattered. Marcel, watching the scene unfold with a dark smirk on his face, tilted his head. "So, this is the great Doug? The man who believed he was untouchable? Let's see how you handle this." The silence that followed was suffocating, the weight of their combined decisions crashing down on all of them. The power dynamic had shifted. Marcel wasn't the one in control anymore. Danny, Haley, and Doug, despite their flaws, had each played a part in unraveling the web of lies, but it wasn't over. Not yet. Doug's heart sank as he realized just how much of his life had been manipulated by forces he hadn't even seen coming. The people who had once been his allies, who had trusted him, were now standing against him. And the truth, no matter how dark, was beginning to surface. It was a bitter pill to swallow. In the end, there was no one left to trust, not Marcel, not Danny, and certainly not himself. The choices Doug had made had led him to this exact moment, a point of no return where survival seemed impossible. But what hurt the most wasn't just the fact that he was losing everything, his empire, his power, his life, it was the fact that he had never truly understood the game he was playing until it was too late. The final betrayal was not the one Marcel had orchestrated, but the one Doug had inflicted on himself. He had betrayed the very people who cared about him, who had once believed in him. And now, as the walls closed in and the truth came rushing to the surface, Doug realized he had no one left to blame but himself. As Danny and Haley stood side by side, watching Doug in his moment of realization, there was no satisfaction in their eyes. They had uncovered the truth, but the truth didn't bring peace, it only brought destruction. The game was over. Doug's world had fallen apart, piece by piece. But what came next? Would he accept the consequences, or would he fight to the bitter end? The camera zoomed in on Doug's face, his eyes filled with regret, as the music swelled to a dramatic crescendo. The future was uncertain, and for the first time in his life, Doug didn't know what the next move would be. Would he rise from the ashes of his shattered empire? Or would the consequences of his actions be too much to bear? As the screen faded to black, the haunting words echoed in the background, "The truth always comes at a cost."